Good afternoon. Thank you for those of you who are here in presence, and thank you to the people listening remotely. We're going to talk about 6G, new generation of telecommunication channels and pipelines. We're going to start very quickly and wonder about 5G. It's announced as a breakthrough in relation to 3 or 4G that we have at the moment. So how is the breakthrough? And more specifically for the property and construction sector. Antoine Geoffroy, your Director, Research and Development for Gecina. Could you start with answering this, please? Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Often 5G, with other technologies linked to it, are introduced as potential pillars of what one might hope for within the context of the Industrial Revolution, same as steam or electricity or telephone. Why did we say this about 5G, and why did we not say this about the previous developments for 3G and 4G? Well, because for time reasons, 5G is going to arrive in a situation where other technologies that can use it are fully expanding. And also because what you need to understand is that 5G is bringing along far more changes on the network than previous generations. Previous generations, 3G, 4G, provided improvements on flow rates, which meant that new cases were developed to use it. With 3G, we had the arrival of the internet on telephones and mobile phones. So this developed social networks and a new way of producing and consuming information. With 4G, we had the video on mobility, the developing of mobile applications massively. This had an impact, positive impact or negative impact on some sectors. For example, Uber, without 4G, it would not have actually existed. And then Waze also. It avoided millions of hours of cars being blocked in traffic jams. This had a very positive influence on things. 5G, same as the previous generation, we have more flow rate, 10 times more. This is going to mean more user cases. For example, in the office, you're going to be able to do telepresence. There's a change in video conferencing and in development with fluidity and experience that's improved. We're going to be able to have digital twins in real time. We'll have the flow rate on work sites. That means that we can develop these twins in real time and collaboratively with other people who are not present on site. So this is for the flow rate, but 5G is going to also bring in changes with other criteria. We're talking about the waiting time. Or the waiting time is the capability that the network has to process the information and send the answer. So this means this waiting time is the time that is very useful for everything to do with robotics and everything to do with remote steering or managing. So in the moment, if you want to steer a crane on a file, on a construction site remotely, you'll be able to do it. It means that you'll be able to manage different work sites at the same time in the future, or different types of sites. That's one example. We also talk about autonomous cars. When you have to brake suddenly and there's only 1 second to brake instantaneous, to brake, to stop in time, then that will be provided by self-driving cars. Now, with 5G, you will also be able to connect millions of objects in a square meter or square kilometer. This means that there'll be the internet everywhere is ultra connected. It will make the world more efficient and efficacious, and we're thinking about this in property, for example. So community and collective aspects of buildings, the sensors will be connected to make it more energy efficient and to better understand the uses. If we better understand the uses of the building, we can provide the right information on a continual basis, and this will provide better user experience. And then fourth feature is the capability of 5G or ability of 5G to supply a quality of service that is guaranteed, which is not possible with 4G. It means that you can have the essential applications, and this is where we talk about the fact that 5G is a more B2B system than previous ones, because it enables this critical use. I was talking about self-driving cars, autonomous cars, but there may be other examples of this in industry. There's no way in industry that messages are lost when there's an important order, and 5G will enable this. Thank you. Just to go back to that aspect of data that will be exchanged between different parties. Is it a network of sensors? Where are we talking about? We're talking about 5G in relation to exchanging and collecting information via the use of different sensors. So what you need to understand is that today there's this network, but there are other networks, Internet of Things. There's Aura and Sigfox, but there are loads of other types of networks, private networks. 5G is going to enable us to make this all come together and bring together all of the different user situations without actually wondering about the technological uses, which is not the case for the moment. So there's going to be an international standard. It's going to support the communication between the different sensors, the communication, high flow rate communication that's going to be 10 times more powerful. And it's going to replace all of these networks with different standards today, and this is going to be a real hot topic in the future. It's going to become something that's a commodity that's very simple to implement and that we'll no longer have any questions about. It'll be the international standard. Christophe Liénard, you're in charge of innovation for Bouygues. You can tell us more of what the situation is in deploying 5G in France and then internationally. So in France, we have already done something with Orange, Bouygues Telecom and SFR. They've done a few tests on the telecom side. It was in Bordeaux and internationally in Asia, where it really started. And in China, they've already gone beyond this deployment phase. A few figures. China Mobile on 30th September will launch its offer that will cover the whole of China, all of the whole country. And in Beijing, 22,700 units already deployed. In Shenzhen, 15,000 units. In Shanghai, there'll be 13,000 in 2020. 50,000 of those will be indoor. We'll talk about the indoor topic of these systems before. And in Guangdong, there are 78,000 base units that have been deployed. So the movement has been launched. If you take the example of Korea, for example, in Korea, most of the major cities have been deployed or have deployed these systems. It started in December 2019, and for the Olympic Games they did some testing, and by 2020, 150 antennae have been deployed with 21% of penetration rate among the population at large. So you can see that the system has gone far. Japan is slightly behind on these figures. So yes, 5G in some parts of the world has already started in a significant way. In France, do you know what the situation is? So the negotiations will start at the end of September in France, and it'll finish quickly. And in December, the frequencies will be attributed, and the operating aspect will start pretty soon after that, at least in major cities anyway. If we go to your sector of field of activity, what are we expecting from 5G for the design and the setup of the whole system? 5G, as Antoine said, is going to be very important. It's going to ease things in the construction phase. And on we'll have on the work site, we'll have a network locally that will help an exchange of information between all of the sensors, and this will enable there to be sensors sort of spread around without having some with low flow rates or it will avoid having wired systems. It will enable instantaneous information on the work site to be communicated. And so all of the different people who operate on the building site will be able to, get the information at the same time. So it'll give a better vision of how the building site is doing and how the work is going. And as Mr. Babinet said a few hours ago, it will mean savings in time and productiveness and of course financially as well. It'll be interesting. It'll optimize the implementing of raw materials and human resources and material resources on the work and building sites. Okay, in the operating phase, I should imagine the situation will change fully. So what can we expect from building developers who have a vision, overall overview of it, and also users, from the user's point of view, what will this mean? Okay, so for property managers or developers, it will provide the same thing. They'll be able to have all of these different sensors, interesting sensors, that will give them interesting information. So, for example, there could be an inspection system with a drone, with a 4K or 8K camera that feeds back the information. And, for example, for works for the project management or in complex areas, rather than sending someone there or to go up a crane or sending a person, you'll be able to do this with a drone, and it'll mean that you can get fine-tuned information and precision information. You'll be able to see the tiny little cracks or in the equipment or the problems in a much finer-tuned way. It'll be very interesting for maintenance, from a maintenance point of view for buildings. It will mean a lot of progress in terms of maintenance, I think. And I should imagine this will also be the case for restoration work sites, such as Notre Dame, for example. Yes, this will mean that we'll have a very precise vision of objects that are in positions that are very difficult to access by human beings. And then it will also enable the information to be in the cloud. When we talk about management, technical management, we'll have this information in the cloud rather than physically in the building. So for building managers or property managers, it will be a way of going beyond this difficulty. What about the users who are expecting something different? They're going to have an infrastructure that's already set up once the building has been built, but what can they expect in terms of how 5G is going to improve things and make things easier for them? Okay, one of the things that's really important in this period after the lockdown is the capacity to have video conferencing conferences with a large number of people. With in-depth information, quality of information that really involve all of the people in the discussion. So the flow rate and the lag time allowed, or the lack of, or the very short lag time enabled by 5G will bring all of this to the fore. And I think you can watch a little video on YouTube about this, actually. There's a little golf ball. It's on a plate, and there's a camera and 3 pieces of equipment that action it, that move it. And someone pushes the golf ball, and in 4G you can see the tray moving, and then it stabilizes with the ball in the middle. It takes 10 seconds, and with the lag time of no longer 100 milliseconds, but 3 milliseconds, the same exercise. In 3 seconds, the ball stabilizes in the middle of the tray, and that's really impressive. You can watch this on YouTube, and it really gives you a full idea of what this lag time actually means within the new system. So if you need some sort of a command control system, this lag time is going to be a very interesting aspect. We're talking about autonomous cars actually earlier on, and that's going to be interesting for that type of object and other types of objects such as this one, such as autonomous cars. Now, we don't yet have 5G. We have Robbert who is with us on video conferencing. Straightforward video conference. Maybe you would like to say something and talk about what the situation is in the world of logistics. or maybe where 5G solutions. Could you tell us whether you think 5G solutions are the right ones? Is 5G the right solution, and is it what you're expecting in your field of work? Robbert, Heekelaar, who is VT Architecture and Emerging Technologies for Prologis.
With the golf ball when I was visiting Nokia in Finland, and it's an extremely big difference with 4G. One other thing that 5G can be extremely valuable for the supply chain, and then I think a little bit outside of our warehouse, is the asset tracking from factory to end consumer. Using 5G, you can actually communicate by the second or by the millisecond, and you can make sure that you know where that good is all the time. If you combine these solutions with for example, a blockchain solution, then goods will never be lost, and that is good for anything. That's good for from financial perspectives, but also from a sustainability perspective, etc. I said it depends on the use case because of the fact that a lot of things in the warehouse can also be tackled by private LT, which is a good solution as well. And there are some of our customers in the warehouses a little bit less sophisticated, which can actually manage their warehouse with just normal connections. So it totally depends on the type of customer and what the customer wants in the warehouse. But 5G definitely has a really important future in warehousing. That's my opinion.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the rest of the debate, could I look at the room now and ask people if they have any questions? No, I can't really see anyone raising their hand, so let's move on. Carry on talking about 5G. Antoine, I have a question for you. We talked about the fact that 5G means changes. The 5G technology will enable this interoperability between communication systems. This will enable high efficiency. Now, as far as what advice would you give to people who work in the same area as you in order to set up or implement this 5G system? What advice could you give them to help? There is a topic that we didn't talk about with 5G, and that's that 5G, in order to obtain all of these features, it works on higher frequencies. These higher frequencies have advantages. We've seen that, but it does bring along disadvantages as well. And it goes less far, and it doesn't go through obstacles as well. It doesn't go into your buildings as well. So that's something you need to bear in mind. So today, when you capture the 4G signal badly, then you won't get 5G. And so it means that when you don't get 4G at all, you will definitely not. You'll get 5G just really badly. So to benefit from all of the 5G features, you'll have to have a special system in your building, which is called an indoor coverage system, and it will enable you to obtain all of the functionalities and be able to use 5G for all different cases that you've predefined. This means that telecom technology today is more and more going to be set up as the fourth flow fourth flow in a building, like water or electricity. It's essential. It seems crazy today to deliver buildings and build buildings that are not taking into account this digital aspect. So you need this indoor network. You need to think about the building, think about what the building is going to be used for, about the user cases, and to be able to therefore set everything up so that you have as much value as possible from the infrastructure within the building and from the building itself. So when you talk about coverage, 5G is supposed to offer this interoperable system with previous systems in place for or available 4 and 3G. So that will enable full coverage of the building. But here, what you just talked about was having an additional system that will really mean that you can manage the flow rate of 5G and bring it right into the buildings. Yes, environmental standards today mean that buildings are far more hermetic or close to waves. This is going to strengthen with 5G because the waves in 5G are higher frequency. This requires specific systems on standardized systems. They exist already, they're standardized, but these are going to have to be generalized, these systems, to set up the user cases that you've defined before, whatever they might be, whether we're talking about video or immersive video conferencing, as Christophe said, or sensors to do predictive maintenance, or even further afield to build digital twins to use in a fine-tuned remote way and be able to manage the site remotely. This means connectivity that you'll have to bring into the building because it won't go through the walls and windows of your buildings necessarily. Yes, may I turn to you now? And so Antoine just talked about indoor management. Let me talk about that. What we notice is that the first customers we will have for 5G will probably be plants, actually. They're going to see this option of having a plant no longer wired as it was in the past, or with Wi-Fi that's not very secure. They'll have this plant with a proprietary 5G network that will enable them, for example, in the automotive industry, that will enable the machines and robots and the tablets of the people working in the factory to operate all of the different sensors that are spread around the plant on the vehicles to follow the equipment, also within the robotic systems or machines. There are all these captors, and that means that they'll be able to all be connected. And this network will mean that everything will be secure. And we've had cyber attacks recently, so people will understand what I'm talking about. And it means that we'll be able to resolve these issues of cybersecurity as well. And then we always wonder about user cases the use cases for 5G. And so we've set up a group that's working on immersive media with the CEA. So it's an open lab from the CEA called Ideas Lab. It's part of the Open Innovation Center. This is based in Grenoble in France, which is one of the best world places for innovation. And approximately 15 partners work there with Bouygues, Saint-Gobain, EDF, other companies of this type. And we're currently thinking about which use cases will need to be developed in the future in order to deal with this 5G network that's going to happen, so that we can use it to use this feature as much as we need to. Okay, I would like to mention something as well. Something quite specific to the telecom sector is that generally technologies arrive on the market before the use cases. This is something that we've seen over the past 20 years. It's always been the case. For 5G, probably it will happen in this way because they've been thinking about use cases for ages, but 5G is not yet operating, so it's just research. And so every time there's a new generation of telecom networks, people have thought, well, what is it? Why? What for? And then a few years later, they can no longer do without it. It's always happened in this way. There's no reason that it should be different for 5G. But once again, the use cases, well, it's been researched for years, dozens of years, dozens of use cases have been studied, and this provides a great deal of positive input into all sorts of different areas, the environment, the productivity, well-being, all sorts of different areas that positive external input from the network is going to be able to help with. Okay, I would like to add something to what Antoine has just said. This morning I was having breakfast with Richard Veil, who is the head of Bouygues Telecom, and I was talking to him and I was saying, well, telling him what I was doing this afternoon. So in your eyes, what's the main use case? That's what I said to him, and I said, what do you think about it? And he said, well, in reality today, consumption per user today is 13 gigas per person. The forecasts are talking about 50 in the future, 50. So let's not say 13, let's say 10. It's going to go from 10 to 50. So it means you'll have 5 times more antenna with the 5G network if you want the flow rate. Do we all agree to having these antenna all over the place, everywhere? And well, no. As soon as you have to set up an antenna, it's difficult with the environmentalists. No one wants to have one in their back garden or anything like that. So 5G is going to enable this flow rate to happen in very densified areas. So the choice of moving from 4G to 5G, if we stay with a system to say we're going to be using 10 and then in the future 50 gigas, well, we don't really have much choice, do we? Now, the resistance that we're hearing about 5G, we sometimes talk about health and safety. Now, what can you say about these different aspects of this new network? Do you have maybe a way out among you three? Would one of you like to talk about this question of health and safety? How safe it is for the transmissions to happen. How is 5G going to be operating, and what results is it going to have on health and safety? Robert, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and I don't think we have the answer yet. I think 5G is definitely going to help on a health and safety perspective, but just has been said is a really good point. 5G will be, if deployed, will be deployed in highly dense areas. So what to do with the less dense areas? So from a safety perspective, it will give us a lot of benefits because of the fast reaction times and because we can anticipate so fast in the data that we get. But probably only in the areas where it's worth it to actually put it. And then the second question or the second comment that was made about 5G in warehouses, that makes the discussion really, really difficult because a lot of things do not need to have all the benefits that 5G has. So for a lot of use cases, probably people will tend to stay with what they know and what they have. So in my perspective, it will take a few years to actually figure out whether this will help us a lot from a health and safety perspective.
Il y a certainement une question qu'on n'a pas évoquée sur la latence, si on veut pouvoir effectivement obtenir cette latence, il faut que finalement les data centers soient plus proches. Et donc, ça veut dire qu'il va falloir construire des micro-data centers répartis plus généralement sur le territoire. Et donc là, dans le cas de l'immobilier, c'est une opportunité finalement également.
Well, it's an opportunity, but it will require something in terms of design and cooling. Well, yes, of course. But today we do amazing things. I visited data center in Marseille on the harbor, and this data center was, historically it was a unit to repair German submarines during World War. And so walls 4 meters thick, massive, and it was transformed into a data center. It was very convenient, and in order to cool this data center, we use the water from the Gardanne plant. So this is polluted water, and it's at 14 degrees throughout the year, and so it cools the data center, and then this water comes out at 38 degrees, and this heat is used for the heat network of the northern neighborhoods of Marseille. So this is the positive use of the data center in order to have this virtuous loop. Oh, well, absolutely, yes, interesting. 5G. This 5G hasn't been rolled out yet, but we're already talking about 6G. So we could wonder why people in academia are working on this, people like me. Well, you need to be always a little, take a little distance to imagine what 6G will be like, but what are you expecting from 6G? Christophe, maybe you could answer this question. Well, in a few figures, what is 6G? 6G, what could it be? What would it be? Oh, okay, yes, it's 1,000 times more powerful than 5G. Latency is 100 microseconds, so 5 times faster than 5G. So yes, I mean, so far it's something which is, I mean, it's hardly being worked on in labs. Korea considers they may have a first pilot in 2026, and it could be commercialized between 2028 and 2030. So, not tomorrow. Yes, we've been mentioning, thinking about 2030, but if you look at the WoU University, which is the European 6G flagship university, you can start seeing tests with even higher frequencies, with futuristic antennae, and so we must think about what you could, await from this. Well, certainly as regards control command, because apart from, the high speed, it's this latency issue which will be important. Now, high speed, well, this is crucial, the flow. I mean, it all depends on the progress of edge computing. If you take autonomous vehicles, we consider, if you take Mobileye, for instance, the Israeli taken over by Intel, their idea is to get as many things calculated, processed in the car, close to the sensor, to avoid losing energy and, having to do with this lead time or latency period, I mean. And I believe there will be this fight between equipment that will enable very high latency and the equipment where solutions will be using more edge computing, and they will be doing very local calculation in order to consume very little energy and have a very low latency. Well, as regards 6G, as you said, we are talking about 10 years cycles, so 4G was, 2010, 2020. And for 10 years, you have this process, to turn out the next generation, which it starts with R&D. So you have a few players such as Samsung, LG, Huawei. They've spent billions on the first, works for 6G, but R&D is not enough, because then you have this global normalization process with hundreds of stakeholders, manufacturers, device builders, and so on. And if I take 6G, I'm talking about 6G because with 5G it took 5 to 6 years. Now, there's what we like to do with it, it's what we could do from a tech standpoint, and this process takes about 10 years. So what we could be expecting from this, well, as Christophe said, well, yes, improve the criteria we have with 5G. We could hope that from an ecological standpoint it'd be more performing, it may perform better, so maybe it will be using less energy, maybe less rare minerals. Maybe also we could hope that, maybe we could expect that there will be less
Et après, à la manière de la 5G, donc la 5G fédère, en tout cas uniformise un peu l'ensemble des cas d'usage et des technologies associées sous une même bannière.
All the technologies that come with the 5G, we could imagine that 6G will also federate other types of technologies that are coming out. Because we have, for instance, SpaceX, which is launching satellites, low orbit, 12,000, I think they planned, in order to cover the entire world and connect the whole world. So, competitor with 5G, well, not quite, because it's not for the same use, and we don't have the same latency. But we could imagine that the new generation would federate this set of new technologies in order to simplify it. And as a user, the idea is not to have to, ask ourselves too many questions. And maybe this will be the most adapted technology to what we want to do with it. Yes, we've been told that the 6G would be very interesting for AI. Yes, absolutely. 5G is starting to onboard some intelligence on the network in order for this network to set up itself. It could automatically set itself up, and this would mean more performance. It would be more virtuous in terms of ecology, more transparency also for the user. Robert?
No, I think it just mentioned the most important aspect or potential benefit of 6G, and that is AI. I don't think we have an answer yet on what that's going to be, but AI is going to be the next thing there. The machines will be faster than us, then, I guess.
Est-ce qu'au niveau de la salle, vous avez des questions?
Do we have any questions in the audience? Can't see very well. Yes, over there.
In English. Yeah, in English.
The question is off mic. Okay, so what I've understood, the question about security and data privacy. Antoine, would you like to answer that one? Well, as soon as you connect an object, comes the question of cybersecurity and the question of data, which is captured by what you connect and what's done with this data. Now, and that's why amongst megatrends we have cybersecurity, because since we're more and more connected, we're going to have to deal with this issue more and more. Now, in Europe, we're lucky enough to have a regulation, which is the GDPR, and therefore operators cannot do what they want with data. There's a very strict regulation, especially certain data with names. And therefore, this regulation, I believe, will have to change as well in order not to block new possibilities and enable other possibilities that we did not think about. So there's this issue of the speed of evolution of regulation. Will it evolve as fast as technology, and will it be in line with what can be done with the technology? Do we have any other questions? Yes, I have a question. You'll react to it, if you like. But you mentioned this normalization process and the telecom players. Today, there are not that many on the French soil, and therefore and even in Europe. So what position will we have? Where will we stand? And how will we be able to, as French or European industrials, how will we be able to defend ourselves in this, field of the telecoms, which is where we see Asians mainly? Well, I'll take part of your question as regards to standardization. I believe that 5G will enable, a little bit like Android enabled this for smartphone, when it enabled to standardize this world of connected objects, especially in the field of real estate, and it will federate everything. So this is a very strong win, and I believe there's this alliance called Smart Buildings Association, and Emmanuel François is the chairman of it, and he's behind all of this. But this is, very important. Then if your question is about telecom equipment manufacturers, as I'm talking to you, I mean, everything's already done. Yes, there are three big equipment manufacturers. Two are European, because Ericsson and Nokia, they're not French, but they're European. And for Nokia, they are in France. But then, yes, the leader's Chinese. And that's why we have new players who are trying to position themselves on 6G. I mentioned LG and Samsung. They're not European, mind you. But there are some countries who've understood the importance of being a major player, and a lot of the economy will be revolving around these issues. In France, I don't know what the ambitions are, but there are new players trying to position themselves on 6G in 10 years' time. And so in the sector, are there alliances between telecom equipment manufacturers and real estate builders? Because you said that the telecoms were a flow amongst so many others in a building. So is this something which one could imagine in the future? Well, we're always stronger together, so partnerships and co-developing objects for the future should be promoted. Now, very clearly, regarding buildings and 5G, right now I don't think there is anything, but why not? Why not? Robbert?
No, I think you're right. They're not at this moment, and I think there should be. As said, Nokia and Ericsson are actually they're not the biggest, but they're big players. So they should not take the lead, but they should be able to help us. And besides that, the real estate people should start to group up and make sure that they form alliances as well, which is not always that easy, especially not in Europe. But I believe alliances and also local and European political support will help us in order to make sure that, how do you say that, the others don't win.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all in one, for attending this session. Thank you. Thank you very much.